From saying that baseball has never been a top priority to getting in a fight with a fan, it's safe to say that Anthony Rendon is one of the most hated players in baseball. And ever since signing a $245 million contract with the Angels, his performance on the field has taken a massive hit as a result of non-stop injuries. So how did a superstar that was once known as an elite, respectable player become one of the most controversial figures in the sport? Well, today we're gonna look back at his career and see if he really deserves all the hate.
He's single-handedly sabotaging his career, and he's at a point now where I think he just doesn't care.
As a senior in high school, Rendon was an all-state player in Texas, hitting .570 with 8 home runs. So as you can imagine, this caught the attention of several MLB teams. And pretty much right out of high school, he was drafted in the 27th round by the Braves. However, Rendon had a different path in mind. He ended up turning them down, and instead, he committed to play at Rice University. And over the next 2 seasons, he would establish himself as one of the top prospects in all of baseball. In fact, his scouting report states that out of the gate, he not only exceeded expectations, he pretty much outperformed every hitter in the nation. His freshman and sophomore seasons were some of the most impressive in school history, and many scouts agreed that he was one of the most gifted young players in baseball. One of his teammates said that Anthony is a one-of-a-kind player. He has all the talent in the world. So, despite suffering 2 injuries in his 3rd year, he was still drafted 6th overall in the 2011 MLB draft. However, the next couple years would be a concerning sign of what was to come later in his career. After only his 2nd game in the minors, he was placed on the injured list for 3 months after spraining his ankle. Now, eventually, he was able to bounce back and made his MLB debut only 1 year later in 2013. But even back then, he was already starting to make some controversial statements. In 2014, Rendon was one of the best players in baseball during the first half of the season. But despite this, he didn't receive enough votes to be in the All-Star game. However, he didn't mind staying at home to get a break, and he told the media, "I don't watch baseball, it's too long and boring." Now, most people were not really upset at this, but just confused. One person said, "I get his opinion and respect it, but why would you say that?" In the future, this would end up being a pretty common sentiment, but at the time, this was the least of his concerns. In 2015, Rendon would once again raise concerns with injury, missing over half the season with a strained oblique. However, over the next 3 years, injuries weren't really an issue, and he suddenly became one of the best players in all of baseball. In both 2017 and 2018, he posted an OPS over 900 and played in almost every single game. One of his major highlights came on April 30th of 2017 when he went 6 for 6 with 3 home runs and set the Nationals record for the most RBIs in a single game. He was finally becoming consistent and reliable, but his next season would arguably make him the best third baseman in MLB. In 2019, Rendon hit .319 with a career-high 34 home runs, resulting in an OPS over 1,000. Not to mention, he also hit several key home runs in the postseason, leading the Nationals to their first championship in history. So going into free agency, it was expected that he would sign a massive deal. And sure enough, on December 11th of 2019, Rendon signed a $245 million deal with the Angels, which made him one of the highest paid players in history. However, Rendon's career was about to take a massive turn for the worst. His first year with the Angels was in 2020, and with only 60 games in the season, he put up some respectable numbers. But it was only downhill from there. In 2021, he strained his arm after only 8 games into the season, causing him to miss 11 games. The following month, he fouled a ball off his knee and missed another 9 games. But the final blow came on July 6th, when a hamstring injury followed by hip surgery ended up knocking him out for the rest of the season. So in the end, Rendon only played in 58 games in 2021, and during that short time, he put up the worst stats of his career by far. But somehow, his next season was even worse. In May of 2022, Rendon had a flare-up in his wrist, and at first, it didn't seem too serious. But only a few weeks later, the Angels announced that Rendon would need to undergo surgery, so once again, he was out for the entire season. However, he still managed to make headlines for all of the wrong reasons, even when he was on the bench. In a game against the Mariners, a fight broke out after a hit by pitch, and Rendon ended up striking Jesse Winker in the face. And not that it really mattered, but he was suspended for 5 games. Now, his wrist ended up recovering faster than expected, and he returned to the field in September of that same year. But by that point, there were only 3 games left in the season. So in total, he only ended up playing in 47 games, which was even fewer than the previous season. And once again, his performance continued to fall off a cliff. But if you thought things could only get better from here, you'd be wrong. In April of 2023, Rendon got into a fight with a fan who was apparently calling him names. In response, he proceeded to grab hold of the fan's shirt and even took a swipe at him before walking away. After later receiving questions about the interaction, Rendon refused to comment, but he ended up being suspended for 5 games. Now, as for his performance on the field, 2023 was more of the same. In his first 43 games, he was hitting just .236 with 2 home runs. But at this point, it wouldn't be an Anthony Rendon season without an injury. On July 4th, he fouled another ball off his leg, and while it seemed to be just a bruise, it turned out to be fractured. So for the 3rd year in a row, Rendon's season was effectively over before the All-Star break, which is pretty sad considering his enormous contract. But to be honest, nothing I've said so far is the main reason for his bad reputation, but rather it's due to several strange interactions he's had with the media. For the rest of that year, he refused to comment on his health, and instead would just say things like, "I'm not here," and then walk away. During spring training, he was questioned on if there were any changes he would make to MLB, to which he responded, "We've got to shorten the season. There's too many games." Now, as you can imagine, this caused a massive amount of backlash towards Rendon. After all, Rendon had only played in 148 games over the last 3 seasons, so this comment didn't really make much sense. But maybe the most controversial thing he said so far came as a result of an interview in February of 2024. While talking about his relationship with baseball, Rendon said that it's never been a top priority. He went on to say that this is a job. I do this to make a living. My faith and family come first. Now, I think we can all agree that there's nothing wrong with prioritizing your faith and family. However, his initial comments caused outrage among fans, as it kinda seems like he just doesn't care about his $245 million job. And honestly, I'm not sure why he felt the need to say these things. Over the years, Rendon's interactions with fans and media have been immature and unacceptable for a player in his position. So whether or not it's deserved, the amount of hate that he gets is to be expected. Now, I will say that most of his injuries have been entirely out of his control, and they can also explain his rapid decrease in performance. However, when it comes to his behavior off the field, I think he just needs to keep his thoughts to himself. And overall, he could definitely try to be more positive, especially considering he's one of the highest paid players in the sport.